The old adage goes, what is measured is managed. It's hard to manage something that you're not measuring, but it's impossible to measure something you haven't named clearly what the process and the outcomes are. And I think this becomes particularly important when you have partners that have very different styles and roles. Years and years and years ago, I came out of the creative space. We had a tech firm that initially served ad agencies, PR firms, Marcom groups, and commercial printers. And then from there, that's where I launched into founding a web company with my partner, Beth, at the time. But I came out of serving these creative shops, and it's astounding. There is always somebody within that organization, just like in a good EOS organization. There's the innovator. There's somebody who has the clarity about the vision and the brand and the creative. And there's somebody who is the implementer, who is that operator, the one who can do the elements of the business. And in creative shops, that's critical because the creative has to be there. That is what makes the company. The execution is what keeps that company in business. And when you look at any product or service where the brand is essential, how do you evaluate the operational aspect and the vision aspect, or the operational aspect and the creative aspect? You can't compare the two of them in terms of how they work and the value they bring. Company isn't possible without both. So determining how partnerships are evaluated is super critical to take into account all the different layers of involvement of the owners. They have an ownership role, whether it's founder, shareholder. There is a role that entitles them to compensation based on how they own or are related to the ownership. And then it's based on their role within the company. What is their job title, area of responsibility, etc. Just because they're both or all three founders, it doesn't mean they all have similar roles. In fact, within an organization, as the employee side of their role, they may have very different titles and roles, and therefore compensation that's related to that role. And that's super important. And then it's the size of the teams that they're leading based on the role that they have. And again, that's another area for compensation. And whether they're involved in business development, deal curation, you name it, are there other ways that compensation can be allocated? So looking at the entire picture when it's time to evaluate somebody's compensation or how much more money they should get at the time at any anniversary date, looking at the entire picture and looking at how are they performing against their role in their style in service of the organization, as opposed to we do things this way. And it's super important to look at the whole picture and look at it in context. And all too often we have folks that are more concerned with how things look on paper and not enough about how they function in reality. The relationship between the owners of a company is the most critical factor to the success of the company. Outside of a toxic environment, yes, there are partnerships where it's a loose confederation of people that loathe each other. I've seen it in law firms. I've seen it in architecture firms. It's not unheard of. These companies can be successful, but at the expense of what? The health and the sanity of the partners. So in order for it to be financially, emotionally, spiritually successful, a company needs to look at the whole picture when it comes to compensation. And these are conversations that are very nuanced. And it's something that I love to do with my clients and helping their clients. And if you've got questions about how this can play out in your company, your firm, these are the conversations I'd love to have.